Yeah, here we go. Here we go, y'all. Season 4 of Diverse Talking Heads podcast. I'm your host, Calvin Gibbs, and yes, this is season 4. We started this project back in 2000, and we've done over 40 episodes. And yes, this is the beginning of season 4. I am so happy, blessed, and pleased that you are with us this evening. And I want to introduce our panel of diverse experts. I am joined by panelist Amy. Good evening, Amy.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
All right. And we are joined this evening by panelist Karen. Good evening, Karen.
Hello, everybody.
All right. And welcome back, panelist Charlie.
Calvin, thanks for having me, and I'm delighted to be back with you and my fellow panelists for season 4.
Absolutely. And panelist Koshal, welcome.
Good evening. Looking forward to another awesome season.
All right. And panelist Dan. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, everyone, and great to start the new season.
Yes, indeed. We actually took a summer hiatus at the end of May, and a lot has gone on in the world since May. And this evening, we're going to just discuss in a very brief manner, because we may come back to some of these topics later on this season, but we're going to discuss a few things. First, let's talk or discuss a little bit about the war that's going on in Israel. Okay, we all know that an armed conflict between Israel and Hamas led Palestinian militant groups has been taking place since October 7th, 2023. Okay, it was a devastating day when those militant groups launched a surprise attack. They did a lot of crazy things to people, killed people, so many thousands of people, uh, rockets. They took hostages. Uh, it really was a bad scene. And due to the intense nature of things and wanting things to kind of solidify, we didn't cover it last season. But I just want to talk to the panelists, get their opinions on this, how they think it's going, whether they agree with the amount of support and involvement that the U.S. has in this entire thing. And I'm just going to open up the floor to anybody that wants to give any kind of opinion about that right now. One thing that I've learned over the summer is talking to different people, different groups of people here in America, of course. Our knowledge of this event that's going on is not as strong as I thought it would be. A lot of people don't know exactly what's going on. A lot of people are not following it. Yes, we've had protests, in Chicago and other major cities, but there's a lot of people that are, I would say, ignorant to what's going on. They don't follow the news. They haven't done any investigation, and therefore they can't really draw a conclusion as to what's going on. So, Koshal, let's see what you feel about this.
I can understand why a lot of people are ignorant. Some of that ignorance might be willful. Some people have grown up hearing news about the constant conflict between Israel and Palestine, and these conflicts seem to be happening again and again for whatever reason. So it's easy to assume that there's nothing that can be done about it, so there's no reason to pay attention to it. I'm as ignorant as anyone about the conflict. I don't know anyone who's personally been affected by it, but my uninformed opinion is that this conflict between Israel and Palestine will only end when the people themselves inherently change who they are. when the Israelis see the Palestinians as fellow human beings instead of different human beings, and vice versa, then only will there be a hope of ending the conflict. But as long as each side thinks that they are God's chosen people and that the land was given to them by God, then I don't think there's any hope for the conflict to end.
Okay. Well, personally, I do believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, and they were attacked. Same as if the U.S. was attacked, there is the right to defend yourself. But how far does that go when you talk about so many innocent people? The Gaza Health Ministry stated more upwards of 50,000 Palestinians in Gaza. That number is probably underreported. Has been killed. 52% of those are women and children. Innocent kids. Schools, hospitals, all have been destroyed, killed, wiped out. And I understand that when you have allies as a country, like NATO is an organization where they support each other, they're allies. But if one of your allies are possibly breaking international law, probably breaking humanitarian type laws, then at some point I just feel that I would have to say, yo, cut this bullshit out, cut the stuff out, be true to what you're supposed to be about, be humane. So anybody else have anything about that?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick response. We're going to have a lot of, because we got a lot of things we're covering tonight. So I'm going to try to make the answers pretty short in a sentence or so. I would like to see the hostages returned, and otherwise I would like to defer to Dan on this. And that's it.
Okay.
Okay. The terrorists attacked on October 7th, used rape as a way of war. When you talk about the conflict, one couple things people forget is all Arab land is conquered land, period. All borders were drawn by France and England at the end of World War I. So any borders are artificial. And that's not just there. That happened in India, that happened in Africa, all over the world. So they divided it up their way without thinking about who was on the ground. This conflict's been going on a long time. As far as humanitarian goes, two things. Those numbers come from a terrorist organization, period. They have no credibility. Yes, there are people getting killed on the ground, but they are on both sides. You have people who use human shields, and knowing, if you're aware of it, there isn't one bomb shelter in Gaza because they built tunnels and they don't allow the civilians to come down there. And that's planned. But this fight is really about Iran using their proxies. And the bottom line is if the hostages were returned tomorrow, it would be over. And they've said that repeatedly. And to hear these numbers and so many thousand, and it's only women and children, and if you notice, they never count their own military people when they put in these numbers. There is a 1-to-1 ratio of military to civilian deaths in Gaza. There has been no war in history where it's been that low. It's usually around 1-to-9, or like World War II, 1-to-15. So when you talk about humane, yes, people will get killed in a war. But when you're attacked, I will ask you this question. I'll finish up here because I know we have other topics and we can do a whole episode on this. But I will ask you this. If Mexico or Canada shot thousands of missiles into America, how long do you think those countries would exist? I'll leave it there.
Good question. Good question. I think we all know that answer.
Okay, I'll let you go on to another topic.
Taco Tuesday would definitely have a new definition. Let's move on. Oh, man. We also have another war going on, guys, in Ukraine and Russia. This one has been going on for so long. The people that I was asking about it, and I'm going to be honest with you, I went to my local barbershop. Although I am bald, I went in there and sat down with the guys and tried to get conversation going. And man, it was like pulling teeth. Mostly they said that it's a sad situation. They're angry about it, that it's happening, that Russia has invaded Ukraine. They were happy in July that Ukraine started fighting back. Like in August, they invaded Russia, which at first I didn't understand that. I was like, how the hell do you invade Russia? But I understand that they can exchange land and prisoners and try to come to some kind of end of this thing. So there's anger, sadness, exhaustion. People are tired of it, okay? And they're fearful of it also. Even last night, I heard on the presidential debate, somebody mentioned World War III, I believe it was. Yes, if this keeps going, if these wars keep going like this, it could possibly lead to more and more countries getting involved. And when it blows up, boom, WW3. So, guys, what do you think about Ukraine and Russia? Do you think the U.S. is doing a good job of supporting Ukraine? Not doing enough? Damn.
I think it's very important that we support Ukraine because we need to stop Russia. I mean, because their next stop is something like Poland. I think we have not given them enough arms, and I think we've also restricted use too much. It's really the pushback, I mean, it's just like in the Middle East you have Iran, and in Europe you have Russia, and in the East you have China, and we need to understand that they don't like us. And and he's going to push as much as he can. It's really unfortunate what's happening to the people in Ukraine, and it's worse than we think it is. But I feel very strongly that we should be supporting them. And one of the things that I found interesting that I was reading about is the degradation of the Russian war machine has been enormous. And if you just did it on a cost benefit basis, it's not costing us very much to degrade one of our chief rivals. And I know that's kind of cold because I like to think about the people suffering, but that's an important fact. I think we should think about that.
Yeah, war is hell, and they talk about, there's always going to be casualties of war. And it's just a shame that so many people have to suffer when they are not out there fighting. They have nothing to do with it. The average person just wants to live their life, man. Raise their family, have a good job, and enjoy life, and they can't have that opportunity to do that. So, what do you guys think about the amount of support that the U.S. has been giving to Ukraine? Good amount, too much, too little? Should we do more? Kosher.
I wish we could do more, but I understand why we're not. Major ideas behind this whole conflict is that Ukraine is not yet part of NATO, and we really want it to become part of NATO so that we can all unite in this conflict. And if the US were to go at a much more than it's currently doing, that kind of, I think, cuts off the international concern of this conflict. So I kind of understand why the US is helping in a limited basis.
Okay, makes sense.
I think support for Ukraine should continue as well. It's important for our country rather, to support democratic processes all over the world. As you know, Ukraine has a really outstanding leader there in Zelensky as well, who has done his best to ask for help around the world for his country and everything. So I also support that.
Okay. Let me ask you about this, because as the moderator of this panel, my job is to stimulate conversation and not to put my opinions out there. But I have opinions too. So just let me ask you, try to frame it this way. When Russia invaded Ukraine, they say from a population of approximately 41 million, about 8 million Ukrainians had to flee the country. Okay, they were displaced, and a lot of them came to the U.S. Okay, now we have people trying to get away. They're fleeing unsafe situations in Central America, and we know the situation at the border is a hot topic. We heard a lot about it just last night at the debate. So, what's the difference between the Ukrainians and people from Central America coming into the U.S.? The Ukrainians got put into neighborhoods and they got taken care of. The kids are in school, no problem. They gave them resources. Yet people have problems with giving the same to folks from Central America countries. I mean, everybody that came from Ukraine is not, you know, uh, doesn't have a halo around their head. They're not, brother, sister, or father, let's pray to them. There got to be some bad seeds in there as well. Why the difference? Anybody? Karen?
I don't think there's a difference. I think because there is an issue with anyone migrating to the United States and receiving assistance when we ourselves need help with our people, Americans here. But there are funds that are set aside by the federal government to cover the expenses to allow people to live in the United States. There are programs that they have, and you won't hear about it. Local county governments have it. They get funding from the state to house people, make sure that they have certain necessities to survive and thrive in America. But a lot of the anger with Americans is that we have people suffering here, bottom line. And how do we help people in America rise up and be successful? Not everybody wants to not be successful in America. Sometimes people fall on hard times. That the housing situation, they set aside and they pay for this stuff. So I think that's one of the issues with Americans, the funding, when we have issues at home.
Okay. Thank you for that, Karen and Amy. Yes.
I mean, I think there's a few issues at play. I think the one that I'll mention first is that many of us have an understanding of Russia as kind of a large, powerful enemy, and Ukraine is a smaller country, and Ukraine was invaded by a foreign country. And that is a pretty simple story for us to understand, that a foreign country came into what is supposed to be a sovereign nation and started enacting war, and that is not good. So I think as opposed to in Central America or South America, you don't quite have that same story. I think it's seen more as that's an inside your own house problem in those countries. So why should we get involved? And then I do also think that there's a racist element to it, where you can easily point to folks with more melanin in their skin and say they're different. They're not like us, and I'm using air quotes that people can't see. They are, they have a different way of life. Why should we get involved in what is essentially a domestic situation down there? You must have done something wrong if you're trying to run from drug cartels. And I don't think everyone feels like that. I think a lot of folks see it for what it is. And very much to Karen's point, yes, immigration has to be controlled in such a way that neither the incoming population or the current population suffer too greatly. You do need to find a way to balance out resources. But I do think that if Ukraine wasn't largely a pale-skinned nation, then the story might not have been as straightforward, and we might be, whoa, we can't be international police, let's be hands off. I do think that's an element.
Okay. All right. Anyone else before we move on? Thank you, Amy, for that. Yes, Dan.
Yeah, and I think Amy hit it on the head. It is partially that. But groups like the Ukrainians, the Rohingya, some others are true refugees from a war. And the ones coming into the southern border are more economic refugees. Now, some of them are fleeing some pretty nasty, nasty things, and we want to help them. But I think you were right. It's much more obvious. Also, we've had a close relationship with Europe for a very long time. And that's just the reality of it. It's not fair, but and we've had a very different relationship, more of a, we're the benevolent big brother kind of thing with Latin America. And we've always treated them differently that way. And I think that's part of it also. And it goes back to what Amy was saying. It's just easier. It's easier for us to understand as a nation because we've dealt with Europe. We had a Cold War with Russia for a very long time. And those of us here all grew up with that. So I think that's part of the understanding also.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dan, for that. And I will leave it right here. And I will say, I'm very thankful for the abolitionists that were like in the northeast part of the U.S. and the ones that was in Canada. And if slaves could, get to them, they could get some safety, some refuge. And I think a lot of times when people are running from a bad situation, they need help. They want help. And anybody that can help them should help them. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they're bringing any danger to you. It's the Christian, it's the right, it's the humane thing to do. If you can help people in distress, help them. So I'm gonna leave that, put a pin in that. We can always come back to that later on. But yo, what's going on big in the US right now? Yo, it's the election. Yeah, Charlie, it's the election. Believe it or not, there's going to be an election in like 50 some days. Yes, a presidential election. And it is blowing up, man. Last night, I sat with popcorn. I had soda, I had beer, and man, my wife was screaming so loud. The neighbors was like, is everything okay over there? I'm sure they were saying that because you would have thought it was a party, a joke fest going on up in the Gibbs house. But let me tell you, let's just go back to June. Okay, the presidential debate with Biden and and Trump. Biden did not do a good job. I know. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He did. He seemed just out of it. I thought he had been drugged. But as a result, folks in the Democratic Party, voters all wanted him to resign, find another candidate. That happened. The new candidate was, excuse me, his vice president, excuse me, Kamala Harris, and she became the party's nominee on August 5th. Okay, she has Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, the governor of Minnesota, as her VP running mate. They had the first presidential debate with Trump and Harris last night. So, regardless of if you are a Democrat or Republican, with this show, we don't even care about that. But how do you think this election cycle has gone? Some things have happened that personally I've never heard of. I can't find it anywhere, anything like this before. What's your guys' opinion about how things have transpired since May? Come on, somebody got an opinion.
Oh, I could talk about this for a long time. I'm trying to do the short version here. So, there's so many things I could say about this. I'm trying to think of a general thought I'm just going to throw out here right now. When I was younger, actually voted more Republican than Democrat, especially in president. That switched about, we'll say 25, 30 years ago. And I have voted for the Democratic candidate since then. And I voted for independents as well. I'm just going to make one comment about Trump. Trump is not quite what I've seen before. I think Trump is a bad person. That's the key word on it, person. And I'll just note that I don't think some of the other people who ran as Republicans for president previous to him were bad people. Yes, there were policies I disagree with them, but I didn't think John McCain was a bad person. I didn't think Mitt Romney was a bad person. And yes, I didn't even think George Bush was a bad person. Now, I disagree with a lot of what they did. And, with Trump, this is a different ballgame on there. This is a bad person. I mean, we all probably know bad persons in life, and throughout history and that sort of thing. And we can give a lot of, obvious examples. of that. But I'm just going to just leave it at that and let others talk here.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Cultural.
I have a couple of comments. Back when we saw that debate between Biden and, well, I would rather call him Adolf Twitler, but in the interest of brevity, I'll call him Trump. I was also struck by how poorly Biden did, but if you look at the substance of what Biden said, it was much better than what Trump said. He had trouble getting the words out. He sounded tired, but what substance he provided was leaps and bounds better than what Trump said that night. And we, as Americans, are holding Democrats to a much higher standard than the Republicans, and we are faulting the Democrats for not meeting that high standard and letting the Republicans off the hook for not even meeting any standard at all. So after that debate, I was wringing my hands like everybody else. Should Biden drop out? Should he not? Should they get somebody else? And I was leaning towards, I'll let Biden stay. Hopefully things will turn around. But I'm really glad that the Democrats did what they did and took action, because it shows that they can take action, that they can adapt, and it shows that they can they can put their trust in a younger, less tested person. I think that's such an important lesson, and it's worked out marvelously. So it's easy for me to say that. It's still, unfortunately, a tight race. It's Trump could still very much win, but there's a lot more hope with those of us hoping for a Democratic victory. And something that this political race has inspired me to do is look up the retirement age in the US. It's 67. So whenever I think from now on, whenever I see a political candidate run for office, if they're going to be older than 67 by the time their term would end, I would want that candidate to say, why do you want this position so badly when it's going to make you past the retirement age?
Mm-hmm.
Why not retire and let somebody else do it? Why does it have to fall on you? Why are you the only person who is qualified for this job? Why not mentor somebody younger than you to take the job? Why does it have to be you?
Okay. Very good point, Kosha. And I'm waiting till I get like 70, and then I'm gonna get involved in politics. I'm gonna run for something. Yes, Amy.
I could probably reiterate everything that folks have said, so I'll try to say something a little bit different. So a couple of thoughts. I want to put out some appreciation for President Biden, because not knowing anything, I certainly don't know him personally, anything like that, I always got the feeling that when he ran, he was almost coerced to run, because at some point early in the game, when we had 50,000 Democrats in the field, some marketing intel said that Biden was the one that was going to win. So suddenly all of the support fell behind him. I think he's done a good job, but I always had the feeling that he didn't particularly want to be president, although I do think he's done a good job. And I was pretty angry when there were calls for him to step down, because as Koshal said, not step down, but not run again. He didn't resign the presidency, but not run again. As Koshal said, he didn't speak well, but the man had COVID and has a stutter during that debate and was up against an absolute lunatic. So I was like, yeah, he's not the most dynamic thing that I'm watching, but I trust his policies. But I think that he made an incredible sacrifice, and ultimately it ended up being the right call by deciding not to seek a second term. So I do want to just say some appreciation for him. And then second, the campaigning out of the Harris Walz team is blowing my mind. I never thought I would see a presidential race get so creative with some of what they're coming out with some of the pretty direct attacks. I still have the and this DNC was very the convention. The speech by Michelle Obama was very different than her kind of exiting speech. The when they go low, we go high. She got a lot more feisty as well. And I am very impressed at how well it's working. I definitely think it is widening the appeal to a generation of voters who is ready for it. And just am very surprised that they kind of took some of the creative and more direct steps that they did, but I think it's working for them. So I wanted to just mention that as well.
All right, cool. Thank you, Amy. And Koshal, I was just kidding about that. I can't stand a background check on me, so I won't be running for dog catcher no time soon.
I was hoping to vote for you.
I can't run for dog catcher no time soon, so we're gonna leave that right there. But as far as what Amy said for Mrs. Obama going low, going high, yeah, when you're in office, you have to hold yourself to a certain standard and certain things you have to say. When you're no longer in that position, you can just say, F it, and tell them what you really feel. And I think that's what
fair point.
And I think that's what they both did. Dan?
So I think President Biden is a good man and has been a good president. I also show the brilliance of his political acumen. He made his announcement right after the Republican convention ended, after they had to select a vice president, the alien from Ohio, and and he basically stole back the news cycle. I mean, the timing was absolutely beautiful. Harris has shown, the vice president has shown that she's ready to be president by the way she formed her coalition, got things done quickly, reformulated the campaign, considered her VP picks, all that kind of stuff. I was very impressed, and I think that shows her caliber for president. And I think that's important. Her opponent, who shall not be named, is fundamentally should never be in that office ever again. I have a real problem with the fact that he is purely transactional and can be easily swayed by flattery and loves dictators. Not even getting into the policies that I disagree or agree with either side. I think that makes him fundamentally a danger to the American enterprise. And I have some real difficulty with that. Unfortunately, because we're still stuck with the, electoral college and such, he can still win and they can still get the Senate. And if they win the House, they can, not certify the election. So there's a lot of things that can happen that are dangerous to our democracy. And I really hope the American experiment continues to continue. And I hope we can defeat this man and that he'll finally go away.
Oh, he's never going away. He'll be back in 4 years. Longer, stronger, bigger, and better. Yes, Karen?
Hey, listen, I at first, after the first debate with 45 and Biden, I was taken aback, but it's between him or 45, Biden 45. I think that a lot of Americans don't listen well to what he says, what Trump says. Not only does he repeat everything he says, he's not a leader. He's an opportunist to me. As a president, because he's in charge, he feels like he can do whatever he wants to do. And to see at the DNC, to see Republicans cross party lines was something I would never thought I would see in my lifetime. For them to cross party lines, to participate in the DNC convention, to speak up, to feel free to speak up after all this time of being in Congress and pretending like they were the three monkeys. Hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. Everything that he did was cool. Okay, he did this. What Americans forget is whoever the preceding president is sets the path for the incoming president. So stuff that they've implemented will make that next president's life easier. There was a lot of cleanup that Joe Biden did, a lot of cleanup, a lot of discussions that I don't think was had with America because of what policies he put into place. We know now that we can't depend on the Supreme Court for an unbiased opinion. We know that. We know that they are opinionated. So after last night's debate, his conversation had absolutely nothing to do with policy. Everything was a profit conversation for him. What can we do to make more money for us? He didn't have any plans for people who are underserved. He didn't have any plans and Project 2025 has been out, and until people started reading it and hearing the conversations that were being had, you would have never thought that you would go to work and work overtime and not get paid. You would have never thought that certain things wouldn't be covered medically for you, like pre-existing conditions. You would have never thought that your right to vote or whatever would be taken away from you. These are things that are in Project 2025. I'm reading it. Education, free education. You want to cut out pre-K. How do you expect a kid to do well in the first grade when they haven't had pre-training to read, write, say their name? So it's like, I just hope that the independents make a choice, cross over whatever you need to do so that we can get back on track as a country and be proud of who we are. Because I'm afraid that if we went to a war, who knows what's going to happen with our people? Who knows?
All right. Well, thank you, panelists. Thank you, Karen, for that. And thank you, all of the panelists, for your deep insights and thoughtful conversations. We're going to take a little break right here. And when we come back, we're going to introduce a new segment to the podcast. It's called The Lighter Side, only on Diverse Talking Heads podcast. And we are back. This is Diverse Talking Heads podcast, and this is the segment of the show. This is a new segment of the show. It's called The Lighter Side. And The Lighter Side is a fun and engaging segment. And we're going to try to do this for every episode of the podcast this season. It gives us a break from the serious discussions and conversation. And it's a space where the host and the panelists can share humorous anecdotes, personal stories, lighthearted commentary, and kind of related to the main topic. So tonight, we're going to talk about the presidential debate that happened last night. This is the debate between Kamala Harris and former President Trump. And I'll kick it off because I thought this was hilarious when he mentioned about the people in Ohio, the eating dogs. I looked at my wife, she looked at me, and I was like, did he just say that? And she just fell out. You know, you hear these crazy things sometimes, and you know it's crazy. But why would you bring that up in an important moment of your life, an important moment for the country? Why would you bring something up like that without probably any fact checking that people are eating dogs? So, of course, on social media today, all the memes of dogs being terrified and please don't eat me, this, that, and the other. And yes, I did post a few things on social media as well. So what do you guys think? What was your funny from last night? Anybody got a funny? Karen, I know you got a funny.
I have a funny. My funny was when he said that all world leaders love him. And she said innocently, no, they don't. And he couldn't believe that. I was like, what did she say? Like, I was like, oh, wow. Oh, like no one's ever done that. No one's ever had that kind of conversation. And I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that she had to say that to him
Mm.
because it's obvious you can look at when he goes overseas and you see the coverage. He's the only person that I know as president who left America and was back home within 24, 48 hours going to a conference. I'm
Yep.
telling you, like
Yep.
none of us have ever heard that. Like you usually stay, explore, be entertained. He's back home within 24 to 48 hours.
They don't
Trust
like
me.
me. They really don't like me.
Yeah, that's how it was last night.
Dan, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, well, first off, he didn't give us any recipes, so I'm disappointed. And second off, he just has the biggest, most perfect crowds. And nobody in history has ever had crowds like his. And you see the pictures and the field's like empty, but he has the biggest one in the world. They're bigger than, all the way from Lincoln all the way up. So he even got more people than were in the Olympic Stadium, I bet. So
yeah.
it goes on and on. It's a very, very fragile ego.
And did you notice on the handshake in the beginning? Now, men probably would notice more than anybody else, but when a man shakes your hand, and Trump's move is to extend his hand and kind of pull you towards him.
Mhm.
Well, he didn't have the chance to extend his hand. His hand was
Yeah, well, he didn't want to shake hands. Yeah.
close to his body. Well, her hand was fully extended. So that was the power move right there. That was the power move. Amy.
Yeah, Dan perfectly teed it up because he looked like he was practicing when his mic was off, just kind of this dead stare. And then where Kamala says, I invite you to go to a Trump rally, and here's what you're going to see. You're going to see people leaving because they're so bored. And he just, like, it visibly almost hurt him. His reaction was to go from that kind of dead-eyed stare he was doing to, like, did you really just say that? Kind of to Karen's point, like, did you really just say that? And yeah, she could have turned that knife a little bit more if she'd wanted to, but she got her point across.
Yeah. Yep. And for those that play chess, I saw it as a game of chess, and she won. She won the game, and she broke down his defenses. Okay. Some things she said, some trigger words. Okay, I'll give you an example. My brother and I, siblings, for quite a while, we both know which buttons to push to make the other sibling go off. Okay, we're very good at it. And she knew exactly what to say to lead him into the path of going off track. And he was actually screaming. He was screaming like a angry person, like somebody had just punched him in his face. Well, it probably felt like it. And I thought that was brilliant, a brilliant play. So, anybody else have anything else to say about that? The lighter side.
Cal, I also agree with that comment. That's what I was going to say because I was watching with my wife, and I went, "Oh my God, he's baiting! She is so baiting him here. You're like, here's the fish, come and get it, And oh yeah, yummy, And I'm just laughing at it because she knew he would do that. He would totally fall for that, And most, experienced politicians of any party would not fall for that. And she just kept baiting him and baiting him and baiting him, and he just ate away at it. I was just laughing so hard. I said, it was a very entertaining television. Well, I've been in some other else was playing last night, and very entertaining. I will say that. But yeah, she would. We should point out that she did a lot of prep before the debate. She went and hid in, I think it was Pittsburgh for a couple of days with her people. They did mock debates, and they had some guy even dressed up as Trump and all that. And Trump, he just winged it off the top of his head there, and then she just ate him up on that.
Yes, indeed. And Kosel, you're going to get the final word.
Well, I'm wondering how the Republican Party is going to cope with what was said at the debate, because they have no choice but to back their man up, including the claims about millions and millions of immigrants eating people's pets. So I imagine JD Vance is going to have to do another publicity stunt, just like the donut shop. He's going to have to go to Ohio, stage a shop where pets are sold as food, and he's going to have to go to the workers saying, "Hey, how long have you been working here? Good. How long has this establishment been here? Good. Oh, give me some of these Cocker Spaniels and these Bombay cats. Yeah, give me some of that."
Oh man, that's a
I
good
feel like
one.
I know my Halloween costume.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Amy. A lot of people probably will take that into consideration for Halloween next month.
And
Yeah.
just one more thing, right at the end, right after the debate ended, Taylor Swift, to her 280 million plus followers, said she endorses Harris from a childless cat lady, and she had a picture of her holding her cat, and I thought that was just beautiful, and and I got a good laugh out of that.
Yep. I tell you guys, these are some strange times, but I want to thank you for your participation in the lighter side. And I hope you enjoyed it. And for our listeners, well, that's about all, y'all, for this episode of Diverse Talking Heads podcast. I want to thank our panelists for their participation on this episode. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kaushal. Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Karen. And on behalf of Diverse Talking Heads podcast, I'm your host, Calvin Gibbs. And it's always important that we take 2 steps to the rear and get on out of here. Until the next episode of Diverse Talking Heads podcast, exit stage left.